Some burdens are not carried, they are absorbed. They seep into the marrow, a silent decay that gnaws at the foundations of a man's soul. This unseen corrosion is the weight of unspoken truths. It is the heavy cloak draped over the shoulders of men who dare not utter what they know to be real, what they feel deep within the chambers of their being. This is the silent burden, the one that doesn't weigh on the hands, but on the very core of existence. A man builds his world on a foundation of perceived strength. He learns to stand tall, to face adversity, to wear his stoicism like armor. But this armor often becomes a prison, not for the world, but for himself. Within its confines, truths begin to fester. Small observations, dismissed as irrelevant. Harsh realities, ignored for the sake of peace or propriety. Uncomfortable feelings, buried deep to maintain an outward composure. Each one a tiny shard of glass, lodged beneath the skin. He witnesses the subtle betrayals, the unspoken resentments that poison relationships. He sees the compromises that erode integrity, the deceptions that fuel societal rot. He feels the dissonance between the world he presents and the world he experiences. Yet, the words remain trapped. The throat tightens. The mind rationalizes, "It's not my place. It won't change anything. I must remain strong." This silence is not strength. It is a slow internal suicide. The consequences are not immediate, but insidious. The constant vigilance required to maintain the façade drains his energy. The unacknowledged emotions manifest as anxiety, depression, or uncharacteristic anger. His connections become superficial, for true intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability demands the sharing of these buried truths. He becomes a ghost in his own life, present but unseen, understood by no one, least of all himself. Consider the soldier on the battlefield. He carries the weight of his rifle, his pack, the fear of death. But the greater burden for many is the unspoken horror witnessed, the moral compromises made, the silent screams of fallen comrades that echo in the quiet moments. He returns home, a man seemingly whole, but internally fractured by the truths he cannot articulate to a world that asks only, "Did you do your duty?" Ye now. The philosopher Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, warned of the corrosive nature of unexpressed emotions. He understood that what is contained will eventually fester. "We are not given one life, but many," he wrote, implying the need to continually shed the old and embrace the new. But how can a man shed the old if he never acknowledges its true form, its true weight? This internal pressure cooker does not explode outward in a cathartic release. More often, it implodes. The man begins to shrink, not physically but spiritually. His passions dwindle. His drive diminishes. His capacity for joy contracts. He finds himself increasingly isolated, not by circumstance, but by his own internal walls. He is surrounded by people, yet utterly alone, a prisoner of his own guarded silence. He becomes a hollow echo of the man he could have been. Think of a king who knows his advisors are corrupt, his treasury being plundered, his people suffering from policies he knows are unjust. He maintains the illusion of control, the regal indifference. But in the dead of night, the weight of that unspoken knowledge crushes him. He is king, yet he is powerless, trapped by the very truths he refuses to speak, and the responsibility that comes with speaking them. The crown becomes a torment. This is not about voicing every petty grievance or every fleeting doubt. This is about the fundamental realities that shape a man's existence and his perception of it. It is about the deceptions he perpetrates on himself and others, the compromises that gnaw at his conscience, the fundamental truths about himself and the world that he suppresses for comfort or convenience. These are the weights that break him. What is the cost of maintaining this intricate web of silence? It is the erosion of authenticity. It is the dulling of one's senses to genuine experience. It is the slow poisoning of the soul. The man who avoids speaking difficult truths lives a life of quiet desperation, a perpetual state of low-grade internal conflict. He may appear functional, even successful, but he is living a lie, and that lie is a heavy, suffocating blanket. The internal conflict is exhausting. Every interaction becomes a performance. Every decision is weighed against the potential for exposure. This mental and emotional overhead prevents him from engaging fully with life, from pursuing his goals with true vigor, from experiencing genuine connection. He is perpetually conserving energy not for a great purpose, but for the simple act of not revealing the cracks. This leads to a profound sense of alienation. He feels like an imposter in his own life. He sees others living with a perceived authenticity, or at least a bolder display of their internal state, and feels a pang of envy. He is trapped in a self-made prison, with the key to the lock always just out of reach, obscured by the very weight he carries. The path to freedom lies in acknowledging the existence of the burden. The first step, then, is not to speak, but to acknowledge. To recognize that these unspoken truths exist, that they have weight, and that they are affecting him. This self-awareness is the first chink in the armor, the first ray of light piercing the gloom. It is the admission that the edifice is not as solid as it appears. It is the beginning of understanding. The temptation is to double down, to bury the truths even deeper, to strengthen the walls. This only accelerates the collapse. The weight becomes unbearable. The pressure mounts until something breaks. It could be his health, his relationships, his career, or his very spirit. The man who refuses to bear the weight of his own truths eventually breaks under it. This is the paradox. The refusal to acknowledge and bear the weight of unspoken truths leads to being crushed by them. True strength is not the absence of burdens, but the capacity to carry them with integrity and awareness. It is about integrating these truths, not to parade them, but to understand their influence and to make conscious choices about how they shape his path forward. He must learn to differentiate between necessary silence and destructive suppression. Not every thought needs to be voiced, but the fundamental truths about his reality, his integrity, and his values must be acknowledged internally, at the very least. This internal reckoning is the crucible in which a man forges genuine resilience. It is the ultimate act of self-mastery. The path to lifting this crushing weight begins with a single terrifying act: honest self-appraisal, facing the shadows, naming the demons, acknowledging the harsh realities he has so diligently ignored. This is not a call for public confession, but for private integrity. It is the silent vow to himself to no longer be a prisoner of his own suppressed reality. This is where true strength is born, not in the avoidance of the burden, but in the courage to finally see it, feel it, and begin the slow, arduous process of bearing it with clear eyes and an unyielding spirit. The man who chooses this path transforms from a victim of unspoken truths into the architect of his own reality. He carried the silence like a shroud, a heavy veil obscuring reality. The unspoken truths accumulated, a crushing debt on his soul. But in the quiet dark, he finally saw the weight was his own to bear. Now he stands, not free of the burden, but made stronger by the courage to hold it.